Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can tell by the graphics, I am going to be featuring solo gameplay. This is a demo, so I'm not fully using the game mechanics, in system of basic fantasy role-playing game. Although eventually, when I am playing it on my own, I will be. And when I show you, future videos, showing the progress of, my use of, the solo gameplay techniques that I've learned along the way, and some of them that I've been piecing together. It will become more rules intensive, and and you'll be able to, see that real connection to the game system, and then some of the other things that I'm doing here. So to go off of the last video that I was showing you, I was dealing with some like stands and everything that I had purchased. So I had shown you all these kind of plastic stands that I got on Amazon. They're 1 inch base. You have to construct them. You have to glue them together. And I had bought the larger ones, the 1 inch size, for the player character grouping. So, and then I just printed up a paper model of this is actually an elf ranger, but the actual character that this is going to represent is a half orc ranger. And then I had gotten smaller ones of these, but they were unusable. I mean, it was just almost impossible to get them glued together, and and for them to stay. And they were much smaller. So I looked on the internet for you know, other ways of doing this, and I came across a suggestion to use these binder clips. So these are 3/4 of an inch binder clip, and then I have here a wild boar, and I'll bring it up close so you can see it. So you can actually take one of the arms down, and so you can see. So this is a wild boar, printed on both sides. I leave the handles up and on. You could actually remove these clips, and so you would just have the stand with the image if you wanted to. But to me, since I might have to interchange them, it's better to keep them on for that purpose. These were much cheaper than the plastic. You could actually go on Amazon and get 144 of them for less than $10. I had purchased these in little cases from a CVS pharmacy. They were less than $3 for 12 clips, and you actually end up with the extra, the little case, which I've been using to store some of my leftover pages. So the the actual paper cutouts that you can find, I found that it was very difficult to find ones that would print out to the right size and format correctly. And I had messed around. I had purchased a couple, fairly cheap, maybe $3 to $5 per grouping, and they still were not giving me what I was looking for. And so after a little bit more search online, I came across Dark City Games. So this is a sheet from, I'll try to get, so Dark City Games, and you can see these were coming out at a decent size, and on top of that, they're already scaled. So your orcs are taller than your goblins, and I mean, they have different scenarios, so you can see that there's some kind of like a kraken in here, and they had several others, and they had multiple sheets based on the scenario. So it's kind of a tabletop combat, a battle game, and so there's various scenarios. They have everything free to download. And so, I've got a variety of sheets. So I just moved my camera. I shouldn't have done that. I got a variety of sheets. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the board that I had set up, and it's still not complete. I have to put some other components on it, but let me bring you to the board. So this here view, and I just moved it and lost some of what I was looking to do. Darn, that's what happens when you touch things and you shouldn't. Uh-oh. There we go. Hopefully that'll work out fine. So this is the mat board that I had purchased, and it's 23 by 27. And then I purchased a trifold board that you can see. Here's one end of the trifold. So this board here, kind of fit almost identical to the centerpiece, and then it has true trifolds. And I can turn this and see. So I have the random encounters here, and eventually I'll put that into a sleeve. Up above, I'll have another, room for another sleeve. And same thing on the other side. I have the fate chart and then another resolution chart, although I'll probably change that up. You can see I already started putting together like the potential encounters for this adventure, and using the chart from basic fantasy. I looked at level 1 and looked at the random encounters possibilities, for a level 1 adventure. And then I searched around and looked for various paper cutouts that I could find. So these are paper miniatures if you want to search on the internet. And I found some that, directly matched. I found a few others that I'm just going to replace. So instead of a cobra, I'm going to use let's see if I can hold this right for the camera. So I'm going to use this giant centipede to replace a cobra, and so on. I've added, some wolves. The encounters include wolves, so I have one larger wolf, followed by a few smaller ones. So the larger wolf will represent the alpha of the group. I came up with the idea that they have these. This is a rat swarm. So the rat swarm isn't an individual creature; it is an entity, and then it will spawn out these giant rats from the swarm, and so the players can, or the characters in the group can either attack the individual rats, or they can try to, hit the swarm and deplete the swarm so that it won't generate as much. So that's something I'm going to, kind of work on and play it out. Then I have all my goblins, a couple giant bats, a wild boar. So I kind of have these set up, prepared for a variety of situations as we go along. Now, one of the things, I had recommended in the other, any other video was to take a look at Artichokedips, both his Facebook page and his YouTube channel, because that was really the inspiration for my getting involved with this kind of role playing. And so I certainly recommend you to go and take a look at his both his website and his YouTube channel. Subscribe, follow, because he really is putting out some really good stuff. Robert is his name. Robert's really putting out some great stuff. So the one thing I noticed was that he was using a preset dungeon, and he was bringing his characters through the scenarios with a preset dungeon. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to not have a preset dungeon, but to randomize even that, to a certain extent. And that's what gave me the idea of purchasing this kind of a board. It's a dry erase board. It came with, it came with dry erase markers. It came with a set of dice and and an eraser, obviously. All of it for about $21. So you really, in my opinion, you really can't go wrong with that. And I was trying to think of a system of, so how do I randomize? And in randomizing, you have to ask yourself, a number of questions. And I'm eventually going to write this all out and have this, have this kind of randomizing chart. So to determine, what is the entry type? Any other subsections of that particular thing. Then what do you enter into? What is the overall complex, type? Is it a natural cave system? Is it a, is it a marble-walled mausoleum? Is it a crypt? Is it a, is it a castle dungeon with stone walls? Is it some other kind of a structure? And just have, that as the baseline. Now these are 1-inch squares, and in most cases they usually have 10 feet represents a 1-inch square. But I found that if I'm using these icons, it doesn't make sense that a hallway would be 20 feet wide, to be. So what I did was I decided that these would be 5-foot squares. All right, and so that way I can have, the characters move side by side in a 10-foot wide, in a 10-foot wide hallway, but it also gives me opportunities to narrow down certain areas where the characters would have to kind of get bottlenecked and go through single file through certain things, where it would be a bridge or a cleft in the wall where they'd have to slip through from one room to the other. So that's one change that I was thinking of doing. Now, the other thing is that, when I'm rolling to see how long a hallway is and then what happens at the end of that hallway, the board is, actually, it's not an infinite space. You're going to come to an edge. And so what you would have to do once you get there is you'd have to, use like a fishhook type of, turnaround, or have it go in a different direction, or have it drop depth and go underneath an already existing, board that I've written up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to randomize. I'm going to have them start from 0 to, I count this one as 0 and this one to 23. So really, I'm just going to roll a d20, and so that's 10. So that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is going to be my start point right here. All right, and I'll put my first character here, the second one here, and now we're going to see, so that's where they're entering in. Let's see if you can, there you go. So this is where they're going to enter in, never mind all these pieces over here on the side. Now I'm going to roll I'm going to roll a die. I'll roll a d8. I want to see how far along this path goes, and I'm going to subtract 1. So it's going to be from 0 to 7 squares long. All right, so 6 squares long. So it's kind of a long entry. Now I come to the room, all right, and I want to decide what's the dimensions of this room. So I'm going to use a D6 and a D8. I'm going to say the D8 is going to be the width of the room, and the D6 a D6 will be the width or width. So I rolled a 1 and a 2. So this is going to be kind of a narrow room. It's going to be 1 this way, and 2 this way. So kind of a small space, right? Did I do this wrong? Yeah, I did. Kind of a small space. So 1 by 2 off of there. Now, so now my characters are about to approach in, and I want to see how many exits are going to be in this, in this space here. So I'm going to roll, and there shouldn't be that many entrances and exits, from a particular room or a small alcove. So I would say there's no entrances or exits with a roll of a 1. There's 1 with a 2 and a 3, and there's 2 with a 4. All right, and so I rolled a 2. So there's going to be just 1 entry or exit from this room. And you could do very, very simple. You can say that there's using the compass rose. There could be a northern, a south, an east, or, a west. So a 1 north. So it's going to be someplace here. Now it doesn't have to be direct line. So I'm going to say it's going to be over here. All right. I'm going to say it's narrow too. All right. So I'm going to make some kind of just an indicator. Now, what's the chances of something happening in here? So looking at the rooms, there could be a random encounter along the way. So the characters start moving in, and we could roll for a random encounter. I rolled a 1. So a 1 is actually a random encounter. So now I roll a d12. And I rolled a 9. So I look at the chart, and a 9 is a snake or a cobra. So like I said, I actually have here we go. Perfect. I'm going to move this a little bit. So I actually have snakes. So I'll show you how fast we can do this. We are going to just create this ahead of time. I mean, I could have done this ahead of time. But this is how fast on the fly. Now this is for solo play, so it's not like you have players sitting there waiting on you. So now I have my, my giant snake, and I take my clip, I clip it in there, and I put the snake someplace in this room. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Oh, let's see, where is this snake going to be residing in? Number 11. So he's going to be in this corner right here. Player characters are entering in. You follow their movement rate. The cleric probably wouldn't be leading. It would probably go. I like having the thief at the front so they can search and discover traps and such. So sides, who's surprised? So I need you roll on surprise, and the red will be the opponent and the blue will be the players. A 6 and a 6. I'm fairly certain that a 6 is, I think it's a 1 and a 1 is for surprise, or a 1 and a 2. So no one's surprised. So then we just roll initiative. Once again, monsters and players. All right, even initiative. So as the players are moving in, or as my characters move into this room here, the snake is already responding to them. So equal time frame. So maybe as soon as they start entering in their order, it immediately, engages with the fighter who is in the lead, and we go through the combat resolution. All right. Now, a single large, snake in a level 1 dungeon is going to be a little match for, for everybody here. So as they come into the room. We're into like a new area. I might want to do another, another check. All right, so no random encounter on a 2. So now they're filtering into this room. Now we've already determined that they're moving out of this space here. And once again, I can determine, all right, well, how long is this dungeon or this room going to extend out? This time, just on a whim, I'm going to say it's going to be between 0 and 5. So I rolled a 4, so that's going to be a 3. And let's see if it's narrow or not. All right. So I could say that there's probably, since this is really a natural cavern, at least that's how it was intending to be. Let's say it could be narrow on a 1, 2, and 3, and wider on a 4, 5, or 6. Okay, so it's a 1. It's going to be narrow. How long is it going to be? I think we did 0 to, so 3. All right, so it's only going to be a small, narrow space here. So it's going to come out like this. So about 10 feet long passageway. And then it's going to come to another section. But in this section here, the characters are going to have to go through one at a time. All right, room dimensions. All right, 1 by 3. So you'll notice that when I do 1, it's 10 feet. All right, in this case, it's 10 feet. And by 3 would then be 3 sections, 1, 2, 3. So a bigger room here than the last. All right, and I know there's some glare, so you're kind of hard to see what I'm doing there, but there's another room there. And let's see if I can get you a little bit closer and you can start to make that out. So you see I drew another room. And then I go through the same process as I did before. I determine the number of entries and exits. Let's say I came across there's no exit. I rolled and I was like, all right, well, this is where I go to the fate chart now. And I say, well, how likely is it that this is the full complex? And this is the whole thing that the characters were there for. And if I had a general sense that, I want my characters to go further, I could say, all right, well, it's not very likely that this is the whole thing. But they didn't find an exit in this particular room. They might think and come across an idea. I might make a roll on their intelligence roll. Maybe my thief or my dwarf character is going to start searching around for a secret door or a passageway or something. Perhaps a ventilation, pathway that was up above. And so they can, they can make their checks and potentially discover, oh, wait, this isn't a dead end. There's a small little crawl space, from, up above that we can climb onto now. And then we can see what direction that goes in. All right. So these solo scenarios, can become, as complex as you wish to. You could be, under a time constraint, and so you could say, you know what, I'm going to stop this. They did enough in these 2 rooms, and that could be the sole, experience that I was looking to have, considering my time frame. Or you could say, all right, I'm going to just leave it where it's at, and I'll come back to it later and maybe we'll do a little bit more exploration. All right. So again, one of the great things about solo play is that you're the DM and you're the player, and you're doing this just to just to experience the fun of role playing. You're going to keep track of what's going on with these characters, and they have all different types of adventure tracking sheets and everything that you can get from the Basic Fantasy RPG website, and you can keep on developing this ongoing story, with your group of characters. You can use this system to try out different scenarios. So maybe you're writing an adventure, and you say, all right, well, you know what? I have this idea for a particular room, and how do I get, how do I make sure this is going to work out? And you test out this scenario here on the board. The other thing that I like about doing it this way is that I don't know what the final dungeon is going to look like, and so I'm kind of experiencing this, in a very similar way that a player, is experiencing a dungeon adventure that I'm running for him or her or the group or whatever it is. They might be sitting there and saying to themselves, hey, this is, the interesting part of this is also the discovery aspect of it. And so, we have the discovery aspect of it even in solo play by doing it this way. Randomizing as much as I possibly can. I don't know, I know generally where where the 12 possible encounters are going to potentially be. Let's say if I rolled goblins, well, then I go to the rule book, or I go to the monster section of the rule book, and I say, well, goblins are usually in what kind of a number? Is this a lair? What's the likelihood that this is a lair? And that will determine the number of goblins that I would put into, the room now. All right. And, as the story is going on, let's say ultimately my main idea of this was that there's a goblin lair, and you are searching for this goblin lair because these goblins were, very cliched. They were raiding local caravans, and so that's what you were hired to do. You were hired to discover where these guys are. And so you're going through this dungeon system, and let's say, just for example, our tunnel system, or our passageway system, did something like this. So it came up and around, and it started coming back over to cover a new to go over a section I wasn't, I had already determined they went through. Well, that's where you can do one of these, right? So you go out, you're on now a lower level. This one goes up, that one goes down, and you can see you're actually passing underneath. You're declining, you're going down a decline and going beneath. So now you're one level below, and now you're up onto this side of the board, and you can continue filling this in. All right. And you could either eventually fill up the whole board, if you had to, you could erase different sections of this board and then, continue the dungeon there. Again, you're solo playing, and so you can do whatever you really need to do in order to keep this as, as realistic an experience as possible, as far as, you're experiencing the discovery that any player would experience, but you're also, you are playing, for just the enjoyment of playing a game system and, testing out things and developing your group of characters. So I'm going to switch views. Excuse me about that cough. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that there's, some things that you can see here that you'll find useful. Once again, I mean, I've been piecing this, thing together, based on a lot of ideas coming from, various individuals online and, various websites and everything. It's, um, it's not very difficult to put this kind of thing together. It's not difficult to, find a lot of cost-saving ways of doing this as well. I mean, I could have saved myself some money here at trial and error as far as, I do things by trial and error sometimes. So I made some purchases that, I really shouldn't have. If I had dug a little deeper, I would have found, that using these clips was a much more cost-effective, an easier way to do the same thing. Plus, I got extra, you know, the extra advantage of having these little cases now that I can insert, insert the leftover paper stock, of the different, of the different paper dolls that I can store now and, label them up. And now I have a more organized way of doing it. So, once again, thank you for joining. I'm getting prepared to go on a vacation, so I don't know how much or what my ability will be to stay in touch and put up another video while I'm gone. But in the meantime, thank you for stopping in. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. If you're haven't hit the if you haven't hit the bell twice, you have to hit the bell twice in order to get alerts as to when I put up the next post. There's also Gaming, which is my Facebook community. Getting kind of close to 200 members over there, and we discuss a lot of different games over there. We put together a lot of events, and people are always running something over there and adding new content, adding tons of maps and other graphics that are really interesting stuff to look at. And once again, I look forward to seeing you on the screen anytime, sometime soon, sometime certainly after next week. And enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a good day.